Hello. As promised, this lesson is going to be about animals. So I am going to actually change things up a little bit and read you a couple of my favorite animal poems, and you can follow along on the page. So this first one is called The Bat, and it's by Theodore Roethke. By day the bat is cousin to the mouse. He likes the attic of an aging house. His fingers make a hat about his head. His pulse beat is so slow we think him dead. He loops in crazy figures half the night among the trees that face the corner light. But when he brushes up against a screen, we are afraid of what our eyes have seen. For something is amiss or out of place when mice with wings can wear a human face. So that poem, I really like it because it's written in 2-line stanzas, and a stanza is kind of like a paragraph, but in poems you call them stanzas. So they're the chunks, and you can have a stanza that's 10 lines, or you could have a stanza that's 2 lines. And in this poem, the stanzas are 2 lines. Also, each 2 lines that are paired, they rhyme with each other, which is pretty cool. I'm really bad at rhyming, but if you want to try rhyming the way that Theodore Roethke does in his Bat poem, you can try that. And I also like this poem because it's kind of creepy. So if you like to write creepy poems or creepy things, you are totally welcome to do that. The next poem that I want to read, I like it because it's completely different. It tells a story. You can tell stories in your poems if you want. So if you're ever stuck, just think of something that happened once and you can just write what happened. So maybe some of you have seen some really cool animals when you've been camping or outside, or maybe you've even seen cool animals in your yard that you could write about. This is called Black Bear and the Orchard. It was a long winter, but the bees were mostly awake in their perfect house, the workers whirling their wings to make heat. Then the bear woke, too hungry not to remember where the orchard was and the hives. He was not a picklock. He was a sledge that leaned into their front wall and came out the other side. What could the bees do? Their stings were as nothing. They had planned everything sufficiently, except for this catastrophe. They slumped under the bear's breath. They vanished into the curl of his tongue. Some had just enough time to think of how it might have been, the cold easing, the smell of leaves and flowers. So I like that story because it tells a story. And it's also a happy poem and a sad poem at the same time. Because for the bees, it's a pretty sad poem. But the bear is really hungry and hasn't eaten all winter, so it's a pretty happy poem for the bear. So you can write about predators and prey too, if you'd like. And you can write a story the way that Mary Oliver does in her poem. And another thing that Mary Oliver does that I really like is she uses personification. Personification is when you give something that's not human traits or characteristics. So in this poem, she gives the bees the power to think. At the very end, she says, some of them had just enough time to think of how it might have been. So that makes the poem even more sad if you're thinking about the bees being able to think about the future. And actually, from what scientists know, humans are actually the only animals who can imagine or think about the future. So you can try to use that in your own poems if you'd like. You can have talking bears. You can have dolphins that drive cars. You can do all kinds of things. You can also invent your own animal if you want to create some kind of fantastical creature and write a poem about that. So whatever you do, have lots of fun, and I look forward to reading them.